Hello ladies and gentlemen, this video is meant as a quick introduction to the Dragon Age lore, a starting point which more in-depth future lore videos can work from. As such, this video will contain no spoilers for anything past entry-level lore. No game spoilers. With that out of the way, please enjoy. We don't know how Thedas and the world around it were created. Maybe it was a Big Bang-like creation. Maybe the Maker himself gave form to it. Or perhaps it was created by the elven gods. Maybe we'll never know. But what we do know is who first inhabited it. It was the elves who first roamed the plains and forests of Thedas. A lithe, pointy-eared people who possessed ancient magics and a powerful connection to the Fade, the realm of magic, spirits, and demons. It was this connection to the Fade that granted the elves their greatest boon, immortality. They called themselves Elven, the people, and their land was called Elvenan, the place of the people. Their capital city of Orlesian was the wonder of the ancient world. The elves used magic for everything they did. It was woven into their very existence. And under the guidance of their gods, the elven empire flourished. While the elves lived on the surface, deep beneath the earth, another race lived. The dwarves ruled the underground from their cities, or taigs as they call them. They built underground tunnels that spanned the entire continent, calling them deep roads. Opposite to the elves, the dwarves were short and stout. They lacked the ability to use magic. In fact, dwarves seemed to be completely immune to magic. Instead of gods, the dwarves worshipped the stone that gave them life and lived under a rigid caste system. The elves and the dwarves mostly kept to themselves, and for centuries both empires thrived. But a new element was about to enter Thedas. A rather unstable element. Humans arrived in the north of Thedas and almost immediately started expanding. It wasn't long before the Tevinter Imperium arose. It was thought that the arrival of humans was what caused the elves to lose their immortality and begin aging. The humans, taught magic by their dragon-like old gods, started a war with the elves, and after a long and bloody conflict that ended with the destruction of Orlesian and the enslavement of the elves, the Tevinter Imperium, with their dwarven allies, were left as the sole power on Thedas. Tevinter, like the elves before them, was an empire built on magic, and was ruled by powerful mages known as magisters. Over the next few centuries, the Imperium entered an aggressive expansion campaign. Over time, the humans had spread out all over the continent, forming tribes. And Tevinter thought it was time for these scattered tribes to rejoin the glorious Imperium. But no empire lasts forever, and pride comes before the fall. The Magisters were obsessed with the Fade, and after centuries of failed attempts and thousands of sacrificed slaves, the 7 high priests of the 7 old gods entered the Fade in physical form, something that had never been done before. No one knows what happened in the Fade, but the Magisters were cast back to Earth. They had turned into horrific, mindless monsters, carrying a plague that transformed others into these creatures as well. They were the first of the Darkspawn, freeing and corrupting the first of the old gods, Dumat, turning it into the Archdemon. The Darkspawn waged war on all of life, corrupting everything they touched. This event was called the First Blight, and it lasted for almost 200 years. The Dwarven kingdoms were the first to fall, and a realm that had stretched the whole of Thedas was reduced to just 2 cities, isolated from each other by legions of Darkspawn. Kal Shirak in the north, and Orzammar in the south. From the deep roads, the Darkspawn attacked the Tevinter Imperium, and while the Imperium put up a fight, their forces were spread thin. Failures in the field, combined with rebellions against Tevinter rule, almost broke the Empire. The fight seemed hopeless. Until the Grey Wardens came. The Grey Wardens were humans, dwarves, and elves, fighting Darkspawn for most of their lives, united by the legendary warrior Caranus. From their fortress of Weishaupt in the Anderfels, the Wardens mounted their griffins and slowly started to beat back the Blight. It would still take 100 years to defeat the Archdemon Dumat at the Battle of the Silent Plains. The losses were unprecedented, but the Blight was finally over. Almost 2 decades later, a young woman by the name of Andraste started preaching of a god, the Maker, who according to her had abandoned humankind due to its sins, but had given them one final chance to redeem themselves. She also said that magic should serve man, and never rule over him. Andraste's husband, the Alamari warlord Mafarath, used her teachings to unite the scattered clans of what would one day be Ferelden, and launch a war of independence against the Tevinter Imperium. Mafarath's military genius and Andraste's inspiring words soon won over many followers, and broke what little hold Tevinter still had over southern Thedas. In the decisive battle of the Valerian fields, Mafarath's forces won a great victory. The elven slaves rebelled under the leadership of Shartan and joined Andraste and Mafarath. But Mafarath had become jealous. All his victories and achievements were being attributed to Andraste and her maker. Mafarath betrayed his wife and prophet to Tevinter. Andraste was taken to Minrathous, where Archon Hessarian had her burned alive. But in the end, feeling pity for her, he ended her suffering with a single sword thrust. Mafarath's armies dispersed, and the elves were given a new homeland in the Dales for their service in the war. But there was no love for the betrayer of Andraste, and his new kingdom quickly collapsed into small warring tribes. Years later, followers of Andraste collected her teachings into a holy book, the Chant of Light, and over the next century spread it all over Thedas. One of its most loyal followers was the young Credilius Drakon. Drakon had united the clans of Orlais and had been crowned emperor. Drakon later formalized the teachings of Andraste into the Chantry, led by the Divine, ushering in the first age of the Chantry calendar, the Divine Age. But soon this new empire would be put to the test. The second Blight had begun. The archdemon Zazakiel had been awoken and led its darkspawn hordes against the kingdoms of Thedas. Early on it seemed that under Drakon, Orlais might be able to weather the storm. But in 145, he died of old age and his son and successor was incapable of stemming the tide of darkspawn. Finally, at the Battle of Starkhaven, the Grey Warden Corrin slew the archdemon, ending the second Blight. In the years following, Orlais rose as the new power in Thedas, and the Chantry gained more and more influence. During the second Blight, the Chantry had created the Circles of Magi, a place where mages were sent to live and be taught far away from others, and the Templars, an order of warriors tasked with protecting the world from the dangers of magic. The Circles were seen as a necessary evil, to protect Thedas from mages, but the mages who lived in them had little freedom. The second age was named the Glory Age because many thought it marked the rebirth of the world, and evil and blights were a thing of the past. After the second Blight, Orlais turned its eyes to the elves. The elves of the Dales had lived in isolation since the war with Tevinter. They had refused to accept the Maker and the Chantry, and had done nothing to aid Orlais during the Blights. Tensions had been brewing for a while and came to a head with an elven attack against a human village. A war broke out between the Dales and Orlais. The elves attacked fast and managed to capture Monsamar and later sacked the capital, Val Royeaux. It was then that Divine Renata, the leader of the Chantry, called for a holy war against the Dales, named the Exalted March. The combined armies of Orlais and the Chantry drove the elves back and conquered the elven capital of Halam Shiral. While the elves resisted for some time, it wasn't long before the Dales were defeated. The elves were forced to assimilate into human society, living as second-class citizens in slums called the Alienage. Some elves refused, instead traveling in small clans living far away from civilization, calling themselves the Dalish. The Glory Age ended with the construction of the Grand Cathedral in Val Royeaux, and its two massive towers would serve as the namesake for the next age. The third age would begin with the awakening of the old god Thoth and the start of the third Blight. However, unlike previous Blights, the Grey Wardens were quickly organized and started pushing the Darkspawn back almost immediately. Despite heavy casualties and damage in the free marches, Thoth was killed and the Blight defeated in only 15 years. Late in the Tower Age, a split happened between the Orlesian and Tevinter Chantry over the issue of magic. Tevinter, ruled by mages, took a soft approach to controlling magic. That and some key interpretations of the Chant of Light led to the divide. The Tevinter Chantry was renamed to the Imperial Chantry and elected a man as its own divine. This led to a vicious propaganda war between the two sides. The Orlesian Chantry called the Tevinter divine the Black Divine. The next age was called the Black Age, as a call to retribution against the Black Divine and the Imperial Chantry. The Black Age was the stage for many small conflicts. Ferelden suffered under werewolf attacks, who were later defeated by the legendary hero Dane. Antiva was thrown into a war of succession after the death of their king at the hands of the reformed Antivan Crows, who used to be part of the Chantry. Orlais started its first of many attempts to conquer Ferelden, but was pushed back by the Alamari, united under the Terran of Highever. However, the centerpiece of the Black Age were the Exalted Marches declared against the heathens of the Tevinter Imperium. These 4 holy wars would stretch into the next age, which was named the Exalted Age for that very reason. Early in the Exalted Age, the religious conflict between Orlais and Tevinter was cut short, as the archdemon Anderhal awakened and the 4th Blight began. Antiva, having no standing army, was completely overrun by Darkspawn. The Darkspawn spread out and took the Free Marches, Ravain and the Anderfels. Orlais and Tevinter managed to beat back the Darkspawn, but out of fear of each other refused to send any help to the other nations. It was once again the Grey Wardens who stemmed the tide. Under the legendary warden Garahel, the Grey Wardens won their first major victory against the Blight by breaking the siege of the Anderfel's capital city of Hosburg. Garahel, famed for his charms, united the Wardens under him, and even brokered an alliance between the Free Marcher city-states. With this army, Garahel marched on Antiva and fought the legendary battle at Aesleague. Garahel would die delivering the killing blow to Anderhal and ending the Blight. So many Darkspawn had died during this battle that most people thought they were gone for good. The Griffins suffered heavy losses during this battle and would soon go extinct. Soon after the Blight, Galahad the Great united the Alamari tribes and was proclaimed king, and the kingdom of Ferelden was established. The Exalted Age ends with the assassination of the Antivan queen Madrigal. She was stabbed in the chest with 4 steel swords. Horrified by this murder, the Divine named the next age the Steel Age, in honor of the murdered queen. Early into the Steel Age, the Navarran dragon hunters, most famed of whom is the Pendergast family, hunted the dragons to extinction. A race of horned giants known as the Qunari settled the far lands of Parvalan, bringing with them a radical ideology, the Qun, believing that all should live and work for the betterment of society, abandoning the concept of the individual. The Qunari launched military campaigns against Seheron and Ravain, finding a lot of early successes and spreading their religion. Continuing south, the Qunari conquered Ravain, Antiva, the northern Free Marches, and Tevinter. Only the Tevinter capital, Minrathous, remained free but besieged. After many years of occupation, parts of the Tevinter Imperium started rebelling against the Qunari, and the Qun's hold over Tevinter was broken. This was the turning point. Thedas united against the Qunari threat, though the war would last for most of this age and the next, which was named the Storm Age because of a storm of violence that was brewing across Thedas. In the face of the Qunari war machine, the Andrastian and the Imperial Chantry united for the first time, declaring a joint Exalted March against the Qun. The Exalted March proved effective as the Qunari were pushed back, liberating a lot of territory. The mages from the Circle of Magi were instrumental in the Chantry's victories. 27 years later, another Exalted March was called, this one with disastrous results. The Qunari were ready for it. A third and final march was called, which after many battles left both sides crippled with heavy casualties, forcing both sides to broker a peace. The Lameran Accord was signed, giving the Qunari Parvalan and the surrounding islands. In return, the Qunari would cease all hostility. Tevinter refused to sign the accord and is still involved in skirmishes with the Qunari over the island of Seheron. The next age was called Blessed due to the peace with the Qunari and the birth of twin sons to the Emperor of Orlais. The Blessed Age started off as its namesake would imply. Despite a rebellion in Kirkwall to gain independence, the early years of the age were relatively peaceful. That would change when Reval Vermont succeeded his father as Emperor of Orlais, and only 2 years into his reign, he started another invasion of Ferelden. Ferelden fought back, but only a year into the campaign, the king, Vanedrin, of Ferelden died, and his younger son Brandel was unable to unite his nation into a strong resistance. Even so, it would still take Orlais 20 years to fully conquer Ferelden. Though Revile was initially praised for his military conquest, this favor evaporated when Navarra invaded the northeastern provinces. With the Orlesian army preoccupied in Ferelden, the Navarran forces were left mostly uncontested. Revile, fearing that the nobles would want to replace him with his twin brother Gratien, ordered the execution of Gratien's entire family, including the children. Henceforth, he would be called the Mad Emperor. A few years later, Revile would die after locking himself in his bedchamber for more than a year, for fear of revenge for his brother's murder. Qunari and Tevinter conflict flared up once more, with the Qunari taking control of most of Saharan, leading to a bloody three-way war between Tevinter, Qunari, and the local population. An epidemic called the 100-Day Cough ravaged Orlais, leaving Florian the only surviving heir to the throne, and when his brother died 7 years later, Florian himself became emperor. In his first act as emperor, Florian tightened control of occupied Ferelden, sending his cousin Megrin to rule as its king after the death of King Brendel Theron. Megrin proved unpopular with the Ferelden nobles, most of whom united under Brandel's daughter Moira, starting a new rebellion. Moira herself was named the Rebel Queen. Moira went on to fight a guerrilla war against the Orlesian occupation for many years, until she was assassinated by traitors within her own ranks, leaving her son Merrick in charge of the rebellion. Merrick, with the help of his friend Loghain and Arl Rendon Gyron, took the port town of Gweren, winning his first major victory. However, at the Battle of West Hill, Merrick's luck would turn. Ambushed by Orlesian forces, most of Merrick's army was decimated. Merrick escaped into the underground deep roads and was presumed dead. With the aid of dwarven warriors from the Legion of the Dead, Merrick traveled through the deep roads to aid the last of his forces encircled by Orlesian troops at Gweren, beating them back. Merrick's heroic return from the dead sparked uprisings across Ferelden. When this news reached Emperor Florian, he sent his armies to restore order, but they were defeated by the rebels, led by Loghain MacTair at the Battle of River Dane, making Loghain a Ferelden hero. High dragons, long thought extinct, were sighted near Antiva and wreaked devastation upon the lands. Divine Fustine II named the Ninth Age the Dragon Age, predicting it to be an age of violence and upheaval. Merrick and Loghain killed Megrin and drove the last Orlesian forces out of Ferelden, and Merrick was crowned king. Loghain was granted the title of Terran and the town of Gweren for his service in the war. The Grey Wardens made an appeal to Merrick for them to return to Ferelden after centuries of exile for attempting to take up arms against King Arland. Merrick joined the Grey Wardens on a mission to the Deep Roads to rescue a Warden commander from the clutches of an intelligent Darkspawn, known simply as the Architect. The dwarves of Orzammar, learning of the survival of their sister city of Kal Shirok, attempted to reunite the two cities, but the dwarves of Kal Shirok were still resentful of Orzammar's actions during the First Blight, where Orzammar used the other Tides as a shield against the Darkspawn. Celine Valmont, through clever manipulation of politics, is crowned Empress of Orlais. She seized most of the military campaigns of her predecessor, and officially makes peace with Ferelden, choosing instead to invest in culture and progress. For this she earned the ire of quite a few nobles and generals. Merrick was lost at sea during a voyage to Wycombe and presumed dead. This led to Merrick's son Caelan ascending his father's throne, marrying Loghain's daughter Honora. Rumors of Darkspawn in the Qunari Wilds south of Ferelden begin to spread. Could this be another Blight? The Grey Wardens mobilized to stop it, and their Ferelden commander, Duncan, searches the land looking for new recruits. But this is where my story ends, and yours begins. From this point forward, the fate of the world rests in your hands. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, you can hit the like button, and you can also subscribe if you want to see more. Anyway, I've been Ragnasocks, and I hope to see you next time.